you can grow your recruitment firm the traditional old-fashioned way. It's difficult, it's unpleasant, it's slow, and it's unpredictable. Or you can apply leverage, thought, and some psychology to grow your business in a way that's predictable. I want to share with you how I've scaled my businesses and put them on autopilot at the same time. So let me explain. I'm Stephen Long. I'm the founder of the Influence Academy, which is a training platform for recruiters who want to learn more and earn more. I've spent 25 years researching and training more than 50,000 recruiters in pretty much every imaginable niche. I've got no interest in what might work, should work, could work, sounds good but doesn't work. All I want to talk about is what actually works. So all I'm going to talk about is what I've done and what I do in my businesses and what's worked for me, my businesses, my colleagues, and my customers. So first of all, let me explain that there's only 3 ways that you can grow any business. And once you've understood those 3 ways, you can then start to think about which strategy or which strategies you want to apply. So what I'm going to do is explain each of them and then break them down into actionable tactics for each. Keep watching to the end because I'll give you my preferred route to successfully growing your business at the end. It's the one I've successfully used for more than 30 years of running and growing my own businesses. So there are only 3 pillars of growth. Now, I learned these from an old school direct marketing guru called Jay Abraham. And I learned these at a point in my life when I thought I was the bee's pajamas. I thought I knew everything. I'd been through business school. I'd studied the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I'd run my own businesses. I'd been the marketing director of a $1 billion operation. I thought I knew everything. And then I sat down and read this sort of slightly tatty looking sort of home published book from Jay Abrahams and literally rocked back in my chair and had to put the book down and couldn't come back to it for a couple of hours because it fried my skull. This is something which, once you've heard it, is blindingly obvious, but it's never taught. So let me explain. There are only 3 ways in which you can grow any business. You can win more customers, you can get your customers to come back more often, and you can have them paying more each time. That's it. Everything else is tactics. That's one of those things that sounds simple, but the application of it is a lifetime's work. So let me break them down a little bit for you. Depending on where your business is at, some of the choices might be screamingly obvious. So if you're a startup, the emphasis is obviously on winning some customers, and candidates, because we're recruiters. If you're established and your team are running flat out and making lots of placements, maybe the tweak you need is to push your fees upward. Maybe that would be the best strategic focus for you. If you've got lots of clients, but you spend all your time trying to win vacancies and you're running around like a headless chicken, which is exhausting and makes it hard to push your fees up, maybe it's time to start thinking about changing the relationship with your clients so that they're coming back more often without you having to fight to bring them on board each time. The reality is that most businesses aren't in such a clear-cut situation, and you'll want to combine those options, combine those strategies into something unique, into a mixed or a hybrid strategy. So let me break each of those big headings down into actionable tactics. Let's start with how you get clients to pay more for your services. The starting point is to understand what value actually is in recruitment, where value comes from. Prospects and new customers will always try and compare your fees with other recruitment companies. Oh, you're charging 25 and they're charging 21. That's not the comparison that's relevant. No matter what they tell you, that is not the comparison that's relevant. That's a particular conversation that people who aren't actually benefiting from the people that come through, they're not benefiting from the quality of the people, are most prone to have. So without any denigrating towards HR people who do a valuable job, they're not the people who benefit from having great candidates as opposed to okay ones. They're not the people who suffer from having candidates instead of superstars. Their job is to get those roles filled at the lowest possible cost. They're not directly responsible for the outcomes that those people generate. So that fee X against fee Y is only relevant if the results that those people bring don't matter that much. So what's relevant is the value that you bring, or more accurately, the value that your candidates bring. So here's a key tactic in getting people to pay more for your services. The key question, and it's one that very few recruiters ever ask, is what is the difference? What's the value difference between an average or okay candidate and a candidate who is absolutely outstanding? Now, obviously, if you're dealing with salespeople or people who win business, that's an immediate financial figure. Somebody who is okay might bring in 200,000 a year. Somebody who is outstanding might do 400,000 a year. There's 200,000 difference. That's fairly obvious. Most people don't recruit salespeople, which is understandable because they tend to be a bit mercurial, a bit awkward, and they're almost as difficult to handle as, well, recruiters. Anyway, it doesn't just apply to salespeople. I've applied that same technique to project managers, operations managers, credit controllers, non-executive directors, and my clients have applied that same technique to pretty much every kind of role you can imagine, even in some medical areas. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're working in the field of credit control. Well, hang on, there's no direct benefit. Somebody brings in the money or they don't bring in the money. There's no financial difference between somebody who's okay and somebody who's amazing. I'm a business owner. Trust me, there's a difference. If you have somebody who brings the cash in on an average of 60 days and your candidate brings the cash in 30 days, that's a massive win for a business. Reducing the debtor days by that kind of percentage is night and day between candidates. So the least relevant thing for that candidate in credit control is years of experience, qualifications, all those sorts of things. What matters is that they halve the debtor days without burning the clients. So if you've got a candidate in that area, you've got an immediate cash payoff once you start to think about it creatively. If you're dealing with an IT project manager, well, they don't win business directly. There's no result there. Do they bring the business in? Do they bring the projects in on time, under budget, where almost everybody else overruns and over budgets? That's a financial gain. Almost every role in a business environment has some kind of financial difference between somebody who's okay and somebody who is a superstar. And that is where the difference between, well, you're charging 25% and they're charging 21%. Yes, but if my candidate can bring in the cash in half the time, is that worth 4%? Because that 4% on a $100,000 role, just to keep my maths easy, that difference is that percentage difference, 4% difference on $100,000, $4,000. You bring in the cash twice as fast. What does that mean for the business? If you've got a project manager who doesn't overrun every project by 30%, and the difference in salary is 4%, the difference in my fee is 4%, so what? Once you've identified the value from your great candidates and you commit to only bringing those great candidates, you're not comparing your fees and somebody else's fees. You're comparing your candidates and everybody else's candidates. So once you've made your value relative, your fees become relative. And you stop talking about fiddly percentages here or there, which make almost no difference to the hiring company, but make a massive difference to your income. If they manage to save from 25% down to 20, it's a few grand. So what? But you've just given away 20% of your income. It matters a lot to us. It matters hardly at all to the customers who are paying our fees. So identify the value difference, value, financial, monetary difference between a candidate who is outstanding and one who's only okay. Identify the difference. What is it that makes a candidate outstanding and justifies that financial benefit? And only bring those candidates to the table. Then it becomes not easy, but it becomes far easier to justify the fees that you actually want because you've deserved them. The key thing to remember is that your fees should be anchored to the value that you bring, not to the fees of your competitors. Price is always relative. The big question, and the one that you want to change, is relative to what? You want to make your fees relevant to the value you bring instead of relative to what somebody else is charging. Second big pillar, how do you get your clients coming back more often? Well, the answer here is almost an extension to the last point. If you understand what your clients are really looking for better than anybody else, and if you deliver that, value, those kinds of people, and none other better than anybody else, you're positioned to win more requirements. You're positioned to win more job orders and more roles. If you understand what somebody wants and then you don't deliver it, then yeah, you're going to be scrabbling around at the shallow end of the gene pool just like every other recruiter. So make sure that you genuinely understand what your customers need and want. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. Try and fulfill both though. So check in with your contacts. How well are your candidates delivering compared to people that they see from elsewhere, or people that they hire from elsewhere? Assuming you're not already exclusive, in which case this part of the video wouldn't really be relevant to you anyway. Are they brilliant? Are they okay? If your candidates are genuinely outstanding and everybody else's are just okay, the obvious question that will take some stones to ask, but you need to ask it, is okay, well, why would you waste your time, effort, and resources working with other people to get average candidates when you could work just with me and get nothing but superstars? Now, I can see why you might not want to put your eggs in one basket, is what you're saying to the customer. I can see why you might not want to put all your eggs into one basket. But if you give us every role, even if you want to occasionally share them with other firms until we've established our credibility, you've got the opportunity to just bring in the A players. That's the kind of conversation that you really want to be having with your customers, not going back to them saying, oh, can I have another role? Can I have another vacancy? Can I have a job? That's amateur hour. That's where most people live, but not you. You don't need to live where everybody else lives, because if you live where everybody else lives, you earn the same money they do, and you work like a headless chicken, just like most of our recruitment colleagues do. Just because everybody works a certain way doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's necessary. It doesn't mean you have to. So try and have that conversation with your existing customers. And as you bring new customers in, which we'll talk about in a minute, but as you bring new customers in, and once you've got a steady through flow of new customers and you're delivering for them at the highest level, then you can start to move towards exclusivity, should you want to. You can start to move towards retained work, should you want to. Personally, I kind of don't like retained work. Don't get me wrong, I like having cash in the bank, but I don't like the sort of emotional pressure of delivering, because no matter what we try in this world, you can't always deliver to always fulfill every role. So I like exclusivity. I even like exclusivity with exception. I'm not a massive fan of retained business. I know that's heresy, but that's just me. If you want to go for retained, you go retained. No objections. It's just not my personal style, but that's fine. So if you do want to go for exclusivity, you've also then got the options of trading fee level slightly for payment speed or payment speed for exclusivity. There's lots of different negotiable variables that you can introduce into the conversation. Once you have proven that you deliver A-grade clients, you shouldn't even be thinking about an exclusivity conversation until you and they both know that you can deliver what they want. And you certainly shouldn't be thinking about having an exclusivity conversation until you know exactly what they want. Just filling in the usual job order of job title, salary range, likely sources, that doesn't justify looking for exclusivity. You have to understand what they really want. Okay. One thing I'd say, if you don't have a recruitment machine or a system built to handle the volume that exclusivity will bring, don't do it. Scaling up under pressure, scaling up under timescale pressures is stressful. Trust me, I once, in the very early days of my recruitment business, walked into, no, that's unfair. I very skillfully won a requirement for 100 new business people in a 6-month window. So I had to go from not recruiting this kind of person to delivering 100 of them in 6 months. And by 6 months, I don't mean presenting them in 6 months. I mean, they start within 6 months. We pretty much got there. We did all right with it, but the amount of stress and strain and struggle to do it, would I do it again? Probably, but I wouldn't do it that way. I would make sure I've got a recruitment machine or system built out so that I can drive the candidate volume. So I've got the right candidate flow coming in prior to taking on that kind of commitment. You can do it. In subsequent videos, I'll show you how. You can do it. It's just a question of committing and thinking and planning before you go out and win the big opportunity. I know that's not the way most of us work, but it's worth taking a step back. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to, and it certainly doesn't mean you should. So before you start talking about exclusivity, make sure you've got a system for delivering the kind of volume that might bring. Which brings us finally to, how do you win more clients? I genuinely believe one thing I learned while working with Tony Robbins, which is that the quality of your life is down to the quality of the questions that you ask. So let's make that question better, because it will give us a better answer. So instead of asking, how do you win more clients? Let's ask, how do you win more clients consistently and keep the quality high? You can build a recruitment agency the old-fashioned and traditional way. It's difficult, it's unpleasant, and it's slow, but mainly it's unpredictable. The traditional way means winning specific and unique job orders, creating candidate pools from scratch each time, presenting them and working your way through the interview process, and hoping that the vacancy doesn't get pulled at some stage or the spec change with no warning. It's doable. And don't get me wrong, if the fees are high enough, okay, it's a way to make an income. But you can't easily scale it because each assignment's unique. And building a team to work that way is a real problem because you're relying on each consultant's unique skills. Worse, if you've built your business that way, your entire business literally walks out of the door every night and goes home. And you just hope it comes back into work the following day. Okay, I'm exaggerating the point. But the core truth is still valid. So you can work like that, or you can build a system that fits into a recruitment machine. I've talked about some parts of this already on other videos, and I'm going to release a couple of videos very soon that break this down into exquisite detail. So subscribe and hit the notification bell, because then you'll be sure to see them when they become available. But building that machine starts with defining a niche very tightly, where you know that there will be sufficient demand and volume of business. Then you develop a system to reach out to potentially highly desirable candidates and bring them into your system. Personally, I use a simple system with LinkedIn. I don't even use a paid for LinkedIn account. I use the free version with a free LinkedIn account and direct messaging through Dripify. It's all automated, but you could use email, Facebook groups, phone calls, combination of different channels. The key is to have a process. The key is to have a process that brings in a consistent quantity of the right quality of candidates. So by defining my niche really tightly and then only contacting people who fit that very precise definition, I know, even before I start having a pre-qualification conversation with them, I know that everyone that pulls through into my LinkedIn system and my DMs is going to be potentially right for my clients. Not all of them will be. Some of them are a little bit early in their career. Some of them are looking to get out and they won't stay long enough for my clients. Some of them are far too nichey and there's only a couple of people in the country might be interested in them. But every single person that I'm DMing through my recruitment machine is relevant to my prospects and my clients. So the trick is to generate the candidate flow. And next, you lead your contact with your prospects with candidates that you know have a very high probability of being interesting, exciting, wetting their whistle, getting them to want to have a meeting. So you either get them an interview directly, or presenting those candidates generates the conversations that turn into high quality job orders, because there's no better way of finding out precisely what a prospect is looking for than by having them define what is wrong with your candidate or what isn't quite right with your candidate. Because if your candidate isn't quite right, by definition, they have to be able to tell you what exactly right would look like. Then you can deliver that next time, because that feeds back into your candidate sourcing, so you know exactly what kind of person to bring to them. Once you've got a system to bring in your candidate flow and to market out to prospects, and those prospects tell you in exquisite detail what candidates they really look for, that then flows back into your process for bringing in candidates, and it all becomes rinse and repeat. It all becomes a process of just fine-tuning and adjusting each step in the process to maximize your success and your conversion rates. So once you have enough data and enough experience, your system becomes replicable, so you can bring more people into your team or into your system, and it becomes predictable. So this, what I've just described, and the numbers I'm about to give you, show you exactly how I consistently deliver 2 placements a month from only 12 hours a week as a recruiter. I make 150 new connections on LinkedIn with potential candidates each week. Each of those gets DM'd to set up pre-qualification conversations where we can work out if there's any kind of match. 15 of that 150 get on the phone with me. 8 of them aren't the right quality. 3 of the remaining 7 choose not to go forward. So I'm left with 4 a week that I'm presenting to prospects that I've already identified in advance. So I'm not generating a candidate and then going, oh, who shall I market them to? I've already identified all of the players by specialization, by geography, by a couple of different things that are particular to my niche. Might not be to yours, but they are to mine. So I've got 4 highly desirable candidates each week. That's 24 presentations a week, because generally they go out to about 6 people. That's 104 presentations a month. That generates 6 first interview requests each week. And from that, we then work through the recruitment process, and I come out with about 2 placements a month. There's a lead time. There's a winding up time where you have to get the machine rolling. But once the machine's rolling, my 150 new connections automated. My DMs to those 150 people automated, which leaves me with 15 conversations each week. The presentation of the 4 a week that I decide to go forwards with, or have the opportunity to go forwards with, to be slightly less egotistical about it, those 4, the presentation of those 4 is not automated yet, because I haven't found a way that genuinely automates that, but it's as close to as makes no difference. It's very much cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. I spend almost no time in the presentation process. The interview requests come in, I've got conversations, I've got interviews to arrange, all the good stuff. I can semi-automate that with Calendly and a few other tools, but it's very efficient. So, bring those 3 things together. I use my candidates, my highly desirable candidates, to bring in more prospects, to bring in more clients. I then use an understanding of precisely what those clients want and the value that my candidates can bring. So if my candidates bring in X as opposed to Y, that difference is, so let's say £50,000 a year, and the increase in fees that I'm looking for is 5,000. So I'm charging you 5 grand more than everybody else, but my candidates bring in 50 grand more than everybody else's. So I use my machine, my recruitment machine, to bring in the right number of candidates, which generates the right number of clients. I then get higher fees by delivering the right kind of candidates who are valuable to my clients. And I get those customers coming back more often, because frankly, if my candidates deliver this and everybody else's candidates deliver that, it's not a very hard sell for me to get first bite at everything, and everybody else just picks up, well, what's the phrase? The crumbs that I leave on the table. More customers, paying more, coming back more often. That's my strategy. That's how I do it. You can do it however you choose, but those are your 3 key drivers: more customers, paying more each time, and coming back more often. There's an almost infinite amount of variation that you can bring to those 3 pillars, but that's what recruitment ultimately comes down to. Now, it might have sounded throughout this video as though I'm purely talking to the owners of recruitment firms. That's not the case. You can apply everything I've just talked about as a consultant. You can apply everything I've just talked about to growing your desk as opposed to growing your business, because building a recruitment business, building an agency, isn't for everyone. It takes time, effort, and hard work, but mainly it needs you to take a step back and think about things instead of making the classic mistake of thinking that just doing more stuff, more activity is the answer. Sometimes it is, but not as often as you think. So if you want to know more about maximizing your own income, building a business around you, or just being a better consultant, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and go visit the Influence Academy. The link's down in the description below.